Anybody, any visitors? No? Okay, well, I guess we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Whoops, there it is.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then Paula's going to lead us in a song. You don't want me close to the microphone.
If you'll join me, I don't know if I remember the words, you'll have to help me. My country 'tis of thee. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
Okay, I want to remind everybody about our next meeting. It will be our last meeting, and it's going to be spoken in style. And we're going to have the head of the insurance speak to our group, which will be great, I think. It's $10, and so if you could pay Sally before you leave, so we can save you a spot, and we can tell the caterer how many people we're having. I think Sally sent out a list of the changes, about the changes to the insurance. Did everybody get the email on that? There was an email about the insurance, and Sally sent it out. Didn't you, Sally?
Yeah.
Okay. And I thought I got it, but anyway, and it's talking about that they are looking at the insurance, and there's the one that is United will stay. Sally, make sure I'm saying this right. United is going to stay as one of the choices. And then the other choice, many of us have the Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the other choice, we're not sure really what the other choice is. I had heard from somebody Qual Choice, but I don't know that to be the truth. There's going to be two choices, and they're trying to make a decision now on which one of these we're going to have. So I know several of us have sent letters to our legislators saying we want to keep the Blue Cross Blue Shield because we're familiar with it, we know it, you know. And I, of course, not got no response from any of them that I emailed, but anyway, so we still don't know where we are on that. And so it's...
They're meeting right now in Little Rock to discuss all this, and that's where West Warren is.
Okay. Well, all we gotta do is just pray. It's the only thing I can figure out, because we don't know.
So Brenda, if we didn't change, if we didn't, change from anything that we were on, so what are we on? Are we?
Blue Cross Blue Shield.
You're on Blue
We're
Cross
on
Blue
Blue
Shield,
Cross,
and
okay.
Blue Cross Blue Shield may be changed to another plan.
Okay,
Right now, Blue Cross Blue Shield, come December, their contract is up. They've had 10 years. Their contract is up. So now they, meaning the legislature, Grant Wallace and all of them that are meeting, are trying to decide who will take the place of Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield. It may be Arkansas Blue Shield will get renewed, but right now, that's what they're doing. Okay.
Well, I sent, the email I sent to the legislator, I said, I was speaking for our group, I guess, or whoever. I said, I don't mind, and I don't think anyone else that is in Blue Cross Blue Shield would mind a slight change in the amount to keep Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now, that's just me personally, rather than changing insurances, where we don't know what they're gonna cover, or whether they're gonna cover it, or how hard it is to be covered, and all that kind of stuff. But I haven't heard a word back from anybody, so it's just a waiting game right now. I try not to think about it, to be honest with you, because it makes me very nervous when you get our age, insurance does.
but like we've been told, it is what it is.
Right,
and it's gonna be,
right. We can't, it's out of our control, we can't do anything about it, so we'll just have to
Just write
pray,
just one.
you know? Okay. Paula, do you wanna introduce Liz, or do you want me to?
I think Liz introduces herself. She's
Okay.
she's awesome.
This is the queen.
That's
We should all curtsy right now.
Hi, my name is Liz Robbins, and I'm the director of the Garland County Historical Society. And I am a retired teacher. Oh, I'm gonna have to have one of those lights on. I can't read my script.
Is that right?
Okay,
Is the one in front, you want it off?
is there another one that can go on?
Yeah.
Well, that's the one that needs to go off. And can we turn, is that, we're gonna try that. Okay. I was gonna say, I'm a retired teacher, and I love coming here every year to talk to this group. It's the most fun group of the year. And I really appreciate how many of you do belong to the Historical Society and support it. And if you're not familiar with it or are interested in learning more about it or joining it, there's some brochures on the front table or the back table that tell more about us and how to become a member and where our building is. There's a little map, so please pick one up. But that's enough about that. Y'all want to hear about gangsters, don't you? Okay. Is it true that gangsters love to come to Hot Springs?
Yes.
Yes. Gangsters like Al Capone, who's on your left up there, posing at the Happy Hollow Amusement Park that was along Fountain Street beside the Arlington. And that's one of those funny, that amusement park was famous for taking funny pictures of people. And on the far right is his brother, Ralph Bottles Capone. By the way, can y'all hear me okay? Tell me if you can. We were Las Vegas before there was a Las Vegas. We had gambling, even though it was against the state constitution. We had a racetrack. We had good restaurants and hotels. We had the thermal baths and golf and the lakes, and after the 20s, and we had a welcoming city government. We were the perfect vacation spot for tired gangsters who just wanted to chill out for a while. A partial list includes Al Capone, John Torrio, Bugs Malone, Lucky Luciano, Albert Anastasia, Meyer Lansky, Mickey Cohen, Sam Giancana, Bugsy Siegel, Frank Costello, Oni Madden, and many, many more. Let's take Al Capone, for example. He started coming to Hot Springs in 1920 as part of the entourage of his boss in the Chicago South Side gang, who was named John Torrio. And they would stay at the Eastman Hotel, which natives might remember from back in the day, across the street from the Army-Navy Hotel. That's now the site of the Federal Building behind Hill Wheatley Plaza. And after Al himself became boss of the Southside gang, he and his guys would continue to stay there until one night the hotel manager complained to Al Capone that they were making too much noise. What a brave man that was. Al didn't do anything to him. He just made sure he packed up and he took everybody to the Arlington Hotel down the street, and that's where they stayed from then on. And that was when the hotel was just completed in 1924. He moved into the fourth floor suite that he always stayed at, and sometimes there's the door to it. It's known as the Al Capone suite today. And sometimes he'd rent the entire floor for his folks. The Arlington's manager was W.E. Chester, and he made sure he extended every courtesy to Capone, and his suite had a sweeping view of Central Avenue. Oops, going backwards. Sorry about that. His suite has a sweeping view of Central Avenue, and across the street you can see the Southern Club where he loved to gamble. Now, a visiting gang would usually come to send an emissary ahead of time to let the people know, hey, we're coming down. And Al Capone usually sent his brother Ralph to do that, and usually a contribution was made to the Policeman's Benevolent Fund. Also, the gangsters were very careful to stay on the good side of local government. And in Capone's day and in those gangster days, that was headed by Mayor Leo Patrick McLaughlin. How many of y'all have heard of McLaughlin? Okay, good. Well, you know he was our very famous, very colorful, very crooked mayor. Capone contributed to Leo's campaigns and once gave him a fancy fountain pen that had a little watch on it. And once in the Arlington dining room, the mayor was overheard telling several of Capone's gang, "Fellows, enjoy your stay. Spend your money and have a good time. Don't bother the locals. If you get in trouble and get arrested and can't get out of jail, give me a call and I'll come down and get in jail with you." And apparently this was greeted with, laughter and backslapping. Leo was just one of the gang. There's no telling how much money went from gangsters to the mayor, judges, police, and others here during these years. Many gangsters loved to get out on the golf links, and in those days that would have been at Hot Springs Country Club, as it looked there in the 20s. And the club was owned by the Arlington Hotel, so that was a natural segue there. Capone loved to golf, and he could drive a ball a long way, but was generally regarded as a hacker. I'm not real familiar with golf, but that doesn't sound very good, does it? He liked to golf in a famous foursome composed of him, Machine Gun McGurn, Fred Killer Burke, and Greasy Thumb Guzik. Reporter Roy Masson said that the gang usually had guns hidden in their golf bags. And once in Illinois, as Capone reached into his bag for a ball, his gun went off and shot him in the leg. Sometimes the gangsters could be found downstairs at the Arlington Toggery, and once Al was spotted in there buying 6 of the same shirt, all in different colors. They crossed Central and bowled at Adolph Ackerman's lanes, and in shops up and down Central, the gangsters bought souvenirs, jewelry, locally made fudge to take home to their families or to their girlfriends, or both. They often visited horse books, in which racing fans could bet and keep up with the tracks in other places. And in Hot Springs, these included the Kentucky Club, the Ohio, the White Front, the Citizens, and the Blue Ribbon. And sometimes they would frequent restaurants and clubs, especially Capone's famous, the Southern Club. Now, the Southern Club has looked differently over the years. Its facade has changed. This is how it looked in the 20s when Capone was here. It did not have that black Art Deco-y looking marquee in front of it. I love that picture, isn't that great? With the cab, the yellow cab company stand is there to the side. And today it's the side of that the Wax Museum. Side of the Wax Museum today. Now, if you want to sit down in Al Capone's favorite chair from the Southern Club, Jack Packus gave that to us several years ago, and we have it at the Historical Society building. The gangsters liked to go to Henry Rouse Shooting Gallery, which was a little bit north on Central. And now, Mr. Rouse had 22 rifles and 22 short cartridges to fire at very light metal targets. And once a couple of Capone's men wanted to use their own weapons, which were 45 caliber. Well, what happens when you shoot 45 caliber bullets at those thin little metal targets in the back? They just destroyed them. And Mr. Rouse was not happy with that, and the gangsters just put down a couple of $20 bills on his counter, which was a fortune, because they knew Al Capone did not want his people to upset the locals. And next to the Arlington, you see the blue arrow pointing to the little white building? That was called the Hattery Building. was owned by Hill Wheatley. And on the first floor, there was a hat shop. Now, they sold hats, they made hats. That was really run by Hill Wheatley's brother. But the top 2 floors, Mr. Wheatley rented to a lady named Grace Goldstein. And she ran the best-known brothel. And it was so conveniently located. It was right next door to the Arlington Hotel. That was a favorite spot for the gangsters and other people too. And here's a picture of Grace Goldstein, the famous madam there. The gangsters enjoyed live boxing and wrestling matches, and they had a lot of those matches here in those days. This was City Hall, which is where the current City Hall building is on Convention Boulevard now. It was a combination building. It had City Hall, it had the fire department in it, it had the police department in the back, and on to the side, there's steps leading up to a really big, very nice auditorium. It was called City Auditorium, and that's where they had boxing and wrestling matches. And the gangsters used to love to go to those. And one time, Capone's deadly rivals, the Chicago North Side Gang, he's the South Side Gang. Okay, the North Side Gang was his rival gang, and their leader was Bugs Moran. They were in town, and they always stayed at the Majestic, while Capone and his folks were at the Arlington. Well, one time, the 2 gangs showed up at the Auditorium Theater at the same time to watch a boxing match. And they marched in, and the police took the guns from each gang and sent one gang down this aisle and one gang down that aisle, and they watched the match. They left, picked up their guns, everything was fine, and they were literally shooting each other down in the streets in Chicago at this time. But in Hot Springs, they left each other alone. Capone loved to go to Happy Hollow. Remember the picture of him on the mural? This is another picture we have of him. It is so rare to find pictures of gangsters anywhere in Hot Springs because they did not like to have their photographs taken. So we're really lucky to have these. He is talking to Danny Stratton, who was another North Side gangster, in front of one of those funny hillbilly sets that they had there. Locals were all, many mobsters, including Capone, loved the thermal baths. That's one of the reasons that many of them came here. In fact, Myron Lansky came here first with his son because his son had cerebral palsy, and he had heard or read that perhaps the baths might be good for his symptoms. And Capone loved to come and take the baths here. He usually took them in the bathhouse in the Arlington Hotel, and he was also treated across the street in the Medical Arts Building by a doctor for his syphilis. That's one of the reasons he came here. You know, Hot Springs was known as the place to go for medical treatment if you had a venereal disease, and the hot baths and then the chemical treatments from the doctor were supposed to really help. So Capone came here for that as well. The disease finally incapacitated him and helped contribute to his death in 1947 at the age of 48. How many times did Capone come here? We're not sure, but it was several times in the 1920s. And locals were always glad to see him and his folks. As I said, they didn't upset the locals. They tipped well and were pleasant. And I heard a story about that from Lois Humphreys. Do y'all remember Paul and Lois Humphreys, anybody? Their daughter was Sally Humphreys.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful people, wonderful family. And Lois was a great friend of my mom's. And she told me that once when she was 14, this was in the 20s, she was 14, and she was working as a waitress at Studie's restaurant on the one that Patty Roddenberry's family owned on Malvern Avenue. I gave this program once to another group, and I have to leave out all these details because I've never heard of Studie's or Patty Roddenberry. So I love to be able to tell this to local people. But she was working there at Studie's. She was 14. She was a waitress, you know, and it was the 1920s. It didn't have a dime. And Capone came in, and she waited on him at his table. And when he left, he handed her a $50 bill. Now, I looked it up, that's equivalent to $907 today.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine how Lois felt, and she always remembered Mr. Capone. A lot of myths have grown up about Capone here. They did not own any or control any, Capone or the other mobsters who visited here. They did not control local gambling. I'll talk more about that a little later. But basically, local owners didn't want or need their money. And local people knew that if they allowed those outsiders to take control of it, they weren't going to be permitted to have the illegal gambling here anymore. The locals wouldn't put up with it, for one thing. There's the legend that he leased a bathhouse. That never happened. There is a legend that might be true that he bought moonshine liquor here. You know, this was Prohibition, and he was big into providing bootleg liquor to people. That he, Garland County was described as one state police official once as the worst in the state for making moonshine. There was a lot of moonshine produced here. So he might have bought moonshine, and the legend goes that he had it put into Mountain Valley water bottles out at the old farm that used to be where the Belvedere Club is now, the old dairy farm, and then had it shipped up to Chicago. You know, that's kind of plausible. That could have happened. The one that couldn't have happened is the myth that we just can't beat to death with a stick, that Capone built a secret tunnel downtown under Central Avenue between the Arlington and the Southern Club. How many people have heard that story? I'm sorry. Now, first of all, can you imagine someone secretly building a tunnel right there? You know, there's no traffic problems, there's no excavation. I mean, you can't secretly build a tunnel there. It just never happened, and for one reason, he didn't need to. He was not, there were no warrants that were in effect here against him. He was on great terms with the local government. The other gangsters wouldn't shoot at him here. He could, why would he want to go in some nasty old tunnel when he could just walk in the sunshine across the street? I'm sorry, that story's not true. A secret tunnel isn't necessary to, and the other myth is that there's a sort of a tunnel at the old Van Lyle house, which became Hamilton House out on the lake, and that somehow that was involved with him and moonshine. There's no truth to that either. The lake wasn't even built. Al Capone was in jail in Sing Sing at the time they started building the lake. So it just could not be true. But you know, we don't need those myths to make his connection to Hot Springs interesting. The real historical record is good enough. Now, the most famous gangster who came here didn't just visit, he's the one who made this his home. And who is that?
Oni Madden.
Oni Madden, yes. The contrast between what he was in New York and what he became in Hot Springs is just stunning. When he came here, he was one of the most feared gangsters in the country, and at his death, 30 years after he got here, he was eulogized as a totally different man and a real citizen. Well, he was born in England and came to U.S. as a boy and grew up in Hell's Kitchen, a neighborhood in New York City. Does that look like a pleasant place to grow up in?
No.
This was an extremely tough neighborhood. And one way to survive was to join a gang, and he joined a gang called the Gophers. And the blue arrow is pointing to Madden, fourth from the top on the back row. And I love this picture too because there's some pigeons in it, and he loved to keep pigeons all his life. He did it in New York, and when he moved here too, he had a loft built for pigeons in his house here. He was tough. When he was 17, he killed for the first time, and he killed a man simply because the man had the nerve to ask Oni's girlfriend out. That was it. He had shot 5 men to death by the time he was 23, and this earned him the nickname, the Killer. In 1912, he himself was shot 6 times by a rival gang, survived obviously, and then though he killed a rival in his own Gophers gang, and he was sent to Sing Sing for that murder, and he served 9 years of a 20-year sentence. After his parole in 1923, he worked his way up to the top of a bootlegging gang, made millions and millions of dollars, and he was great friends in this with Frank Costello and Dutch Schultz. He made many investments, and perhaps the most famous is the Cotton Club in Harlem, the place for rich white people to go and see black entertainers like Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Lena Horne, Bojangles Robinson, the Dandridge Sisters, Ethel Waters, and Louis Armstrong. And they made a movie about the Cotton Club. Richard Gere played George Raft in it, and a British actor, wonderful British actor named Bob Hoskins, played Oni Madden in it. And it was really neat that George Raft was in it because George Raft was a great friend of Oni Madden's. When he was just young and starting out, Oni gave him a job making booze deliveries, and then booked him into small nightclubs as a dancer. And then he financed Raft's move to Hollywood, and Raft never forgot his help. Madden also bankrolled the Broadway plays that made Mae West a star, and he had a torrid affair with her. And Mae West once referred to Oni Madden, "Oh, so sweet, but oh, so vicious." Let me go back here. Well, I'm sorry, this thing just went crazy. Let's get back on that one now. Okay, so there he is in New York. He's at the top of this gang that's making millions. He's driving an expensive car, living in a luxury apartment, dresses well. And in 1931, he drove to Hot Springs in a car just like this one, his Duesenberg Murphy convertible, for his first visit here. He thought the thermal baths would help with those. Remember, he got shot several times before and he had some injuries. He thought the thermal baths might help. And his pal Dutch Schultz had told him, "You'll love Hot Springs. There's several hot spots of gambling, and there's a great cat house just next door to the Arlington. And if you get too bored, you might want to check out the good-looking dame in the tea and gift shop near the Southern Club." He met an old pal named Joe Gould at the Arlington where he was staying, and after a week he decided to check out that good-looking dame, and he went to Agnes's Gifts and Tea Shop at 314 Central Avenue, which was between the White Front and the Ohio clubs. Well, this is our famous Agnes Dinsby, the Hot Springs girl. She at that time was 30 years old. She's single. Her mother had died the year before, and she's living on West Grand in the house that belongs to her father, James Denby, who's our postmaster. After working at several sales, she graduated from Hot Springs High School, and then she worked several jobs as a sales clerk, and then she opened her own shop, Agnes's Gift Shop, in 1929. Wow, that was an unlucky year to start a business for her, so that's when the Depression hit. And she was struggling, and then Oni Madden and his pal, Joe, walked through her door in her shop. And he, browsed through and looked at the stuff, and he told her, I'll take one of those, and two of those, and three of those. And she later told her cousin, I think they bought about $1,000 worth of stuff. And he asked her to dinner that night with Joe, the three of them. And she declined. She said no. But then she thought about it when she got home that afternoon. He had given her his number at the Arlington, and she called the Arlington, and she accepted the invitation, and the three of them went out to dinner at Studi's. Studi's coming back into the story. And they had a good time. The three of them went out to dinner the next night, and then the third night she went out with just Oni. And that was the beginning of their affair. They were inseparable here for 2 weeks. And before he left Hot Springs, he told her he was married, but he had not lived with his wife for 7 years and he was going to get a divorce. And he told her that, honey, I have a prison record. Well, they can't have been a complete surprise because, you know, people like Capone and Madden were celebrities. They were in the papers all the time. She had to have known who she was going out with, but he broke the news to her himself there. When we published an article in our yearly journal, The Record, last year, of the telegrams he sent her as he drove back to New York after this 2-week visit. These had never been published before. They were part of the Denby family collection, and one of the Denby relatives wrote this little article that was so interesting. And in the telegrams he would send her from different spots along the way, he talks baby talk to her and says, oh honey, sweetie, I'm just so in love, and you know, it's just amazing considering who this guy is. Okay, later that year, she visited him in New York, and they went out, and they wined and dined, and he told her how much he loved her again, but that he couldn't make a commitment until he straightened out some of his problems. And he had quite a few problems. For one thing, the Irish gangs were being destroyed by the Italian gangs then. Excuse me, I'm doing something to my machine. The Italian gangs were wiping the Irish gangs out, so Oni Madden really had a big target on his back. He could be taken out any time. And also he was in a lot of trouble with the IRS, and he was in trouble with his parole board. Remember he got paroled out of Sing Sing? Well, the parole board found out he'd driven himself down to Hot Springs, and he had not asked for permission to leave the state. Oops. And they were extremely mad. They sent him back to Sing Sing to serve the remaining years of his sentence. And in a letter to Agnes, he described that as having to go back to college. However, after just 7 months, there he's ordered back to Sing Sing as a parole violator. After just 7 months, suddenly he's released again. Could money have changed hands behind the scenes? And there he is with his lawyer leaving Sing Sing. The parole board finally decided, okay, we're just going to transfer his parole to Arkansas. He told them, I'm going to leave New York, I'm going to give up the rackets, I'm going to live, I'm going to marry this girl in Hot Springs and live there, I want to live there. And they finally said, well, okay, we'll just transfer your parole to Arkansas, but you must never leave Arkansas. You can't leave Hot Springs. And he said, great. Did he ever actually leave Hot Springs after that? He and Agnes did make a few trips, but basically that was the deal. And again, he might have greased a few palms on the parole board to make this happen. He turned over his New York rackets to Lucky Luciano and Frank Costello. And he would tell, until he could actually move down here permanently, he would tell any of the boys who were traveling to Hot Springs to call on Agnes, excuse me, and take her out to dinner. She golfed with Dutch Schultz and Joe Adonis here. She went horseback riding with Meyer Lansky. And she told someone they respected her. They all knew I was Oni's girl, she said. He got a quick divorce, and in June 35, he was headed to Hot Springs for good. Now, when he came to Hot Springs for good, he had been arrested 57 times and convicted twice. Once for a traffic violation and once for that murder that sent him to Sing Sing. He was suspected of many, many more murders and other crimes. But in Hot Springs, he was regarded as more of a celebrity than a gangster, and he soon made many friends. He and Agnes were married in front of the fireplace at the Denby home on West Grand. You've seen that home many times with the white picket fence right across from St. John's Church. It's recently been bought by Noah, Brandon, help me guys. Noah Lloyd, thank you. Really nice man, a real estate agent. He redid those lofts apartments behind the Greenway recently, and he's, the place was in pretty bad shape, and he's fixing it up nicely, and it's gonna be some kind of thing, event center, or maybe a B&B. He's thinking about it, but he's really fixing it up and preserving it. And I toured it once, well, I'll tell you that story in a minute. And they made their home there, and that's where he and Agnes lived for the rest of their lives. Now, some writers have written that Madden was sent here to run a string of casinos for the mob or the syndicate. This is not true. Remember that our casinos and clubs had been in existence a long time before Madden got here. They were operated by local families, and they were not dependent on the mob or any kind of outside help. And we didn't need any supervision or help because we had a gambling czar named William S. Bill Jacobs, who took care of things very, very nicely. He was one of the best gambling chiefs in the South. His big opportunity came when Leo was elected mayor in 1927. McLaughlin took what was kind of low-key gambling and made it a big, flashy business. And he picked Jacobs to be the guy who ran things and kept people from arguing. If you wanted to put a slot machine in your restaurant, if you wanted to start a club or buy an interest in a club, everything had to go through Jacobs. He maintained that strict rule that no outside money is going to be invested in the clubs. And McLaughlin himself met with Madden and explained to him that the relationship between the gambling community in Hot Springs and the rest of the state was very fragile. And if the state thought that New York people were coming in and getting involved in things down here, the local clubs would be closed. And that, of course, would be terrible for our economy. Even though Madden and Jacobs became very good friends, Jacobs would not let him buy into any of the clubs. Well, they said about enjoying life in Hot Springs. Here's Madden on Lake Hamilton. He learned to fish and he got himself a small boat. But remember his friend George Raft? Raft heard that he'd gotten himself a little boat. So Raft shipped him this wonderful Chris Craft boat that you see in this very rare photo. And I think that's also interesting because you don't often see African Americans and whites socializing in that time on the lake, but there he is driving some African American people in his boat. And my theory, I have no idea if it's true or not, but my theory is that he formed friendships and contacts with black entertainers through his ownership of the Cotton Club. And of course, black entertainers came to Hot Springs and performed in clubs here. And that some of those Cotton Club entertainers were here, and there you go. Here's Raft with Madden. There's Raft in the white jacket and Madden in the striped pants. Just when he'd arrived at the depot on one of Raft's visits here, during that visit he took in a Bathers game at Van Johnson Field at Whittington Park. And old friends, of course, continued to visit. There's Frank Costello and Willie Moretti with Agnes. Again, the list is a who's who of the gangsters in America. And and another one who came, Polly Adler. Remember the lady who wrote A House Is Not a Home? And nobody remembers that book? Okay, well, she was a famous Madden, and she came and visited too. And this is a great Happy Hollow picture. Funny hillbilly bar background, and Madden is behind the bar, and I don't know if you can see, but he's holding his hand like this, like he's pretending to shoot the guy who's holding his arms up like that, and that's actually kind of chilling when you think of all the people he actually did shoot. I love this picture because Agnes is so pretty in it. We have very few good pictures of Agnes. They're attending a boxing match at the Auditorium Theater downtown. Madden defended here he is in his golfing clothes. He befriended the manager of the Arlington, Mr. Chester, who was a great golfer, and he was his frequent golfing partner at the Hot Springs Country Club. Madden loved to golf. And of course, he built a loft at the rear of their home on West Grand for his pigeons. One time he sold his interest in 2 Florida racetracks and got a $2.3 million check, and he put it into Arkansas Bank and Trust Company here. And that was the largest single deposit that had ever been made up to that time in a Hot Springs bank. And he settled into a daily routine. On a day he didn't golf, in the afternoon he would sit at the Southern Grill. He chatted with friends, he would talk to the taxi drivers and the waitresses. Many people who were down and out met Madden there, and he was known to be very generous. He was slipping people some money. All this was very pleasant, but you know, he still wanted to be part of the gambling somehow or other. So, after Jacobs died in 1940, Mayor McLaughlin decided he himself would run all the gambling here. Made a lot more money from it that way, and suddenly people were getting a little interest in the clubs that Jacobs would not have allowed to have interest in the clubs. And one of them was Oni Madden, and at that time he acquired interest in the Southern Club and the Belvedere Club, although they were minority, small interests. Oops. Okay. During World War II, again, he was very generous to the community, and some gifts were public and some were private. Now, you're saying, well, what is that picture doing in this PowerPoint? Well, the young man on your far left there is Orville Albritton, wonderful gentleman who wrote many history books and worked for the Garland County Historical Society in his retirement. Loved him to pieces. Well, this picture was taken of the Hot Springs Boys Club during World War II. At that time, the Boys Club met in the old Armory building on Woodbine. That's that building you see there, okay? And you may recognize some other names there like Jack and Rex McMahon. Okay, so there's the Boys Club, and it's being run by their director on a very low budget by a man named Moon Mullins. And one day, Mullins got off the telephone and said to Orville, who was 15, run down the next block and help Mr. Madden. I met him the other night, and he wanted to know how the club was doing, and he wanted to help us. I think he's got a few things for us. Well, they didn't have much in the way of equipment, and Orville had no idea who Madden was, but he ran over there, and he saw a small man struggling to remove a large cardboard box from the trunk of his car, and protruding from the box where it looked like, oh my gosh, it looks like baseball bats, and what else is in there? Well, the aging mobster and Orville, who ironically is a future FBI agent, carried the large box back to the armory, and excited kids started pulling stuff out, and there was baseballs and gloves and bats and catcher's masks and basketballs and boxing gloves. Matt had gone to Stern's hardware store and bought all their sporting equipment that they had that day, and had made sure that the boys club had it. As Madden watched, 3 boys grabbed a basketball from the box and dribbled it to the gym and began shooting hoops. And Mr. Mullins, the boys club director, said, I'm sorry, Mr. Madden, they didn't even say thank you. And the old mobster, with a smile on his face, replied, sure they did. And now we can believe this story because Orville witnessed it. Later, he brought more equipment, including boxing gloves and punching bags. Madden loved boxing. And he helped pay for a boxing ring to be built inside the armory. And whenever one of the matches between boys clubs was held there, he was often seated ringside, laughing and encouraging the 80 and 90-pound youngsters as they slugged each other with their big pillow-sized gloves. As World War II went on, Hot Springs was just filled up with soldiers. Some of them were from the Army and Navy General Hospital as patients or staff, and some of them were from the Army Redistribution Station, which took over the Majestic, the DeSoto, the Arlington Hotel, and the, what's the fourth big one down? The downtown, no. The four big downtown hotels. And civilians could stay in the hotels. Soldiers would go there after coming back from overseas and have a nice vacation here as they waited for their discharge papers or their reassignment papers. Of course, not every soldier in the Army did that, but thousands, about 29,000 of them did. Okay, so we were just awash with soldiers. And a lot of them would, you know, stop in at the Southern Grill across the street. And, you know, if you were a GI and you went in there, it was highly unlikely that you'd have to pay your bill, because if Madden was there, he'd nod to the waitresses and he would just pay for the soldiers who came in and ate there. Now, after the war, I bet you know what's coming after the war. You ever heard of the GI Revolt?
Yeah.
After the war, young veterans came back, young people. They don't like the fact that McLaughlin is running this crooked political machine. They're young, they want to run the city and county governments themselves. There's a huge political battle, the nastiest in Garland County history, between McLaughlin and his machine, the old timers, and these young people who want to take over. Madden at first sided with the administration and the gambling faction, but he got to know a lot of these young fellows. Earl Ricks, Leonard Ellis, David Whittington, Raymond Clinton, Sid McMath, I.G. Brown, and others. He got to know them and he really liked these guys, and he changed sides. After a very fierce battle, who won? The GIs won. And the new regime closed down local gambling, and this was a big shock to the economy. Okay. Have a little techie trouble here. Sidney McMath, you know, he was a local boy, graduated from Hot Springs High School, became a lawyer, huge war hero in the Pacific, came back, was our got elected as our prosecuting attorney, and his whole fight with Leo got a lot of publicity statewide, gave him name recognition, and based on that, he was then elected governor. Okay. A delegation of citizens went to Governor McMath in Little Rock and said, "We're dying over here. Please let the gambling come back." And he was kind of reluctant. He said, "Well, you know, people start complaining about it, but okay, do it kind of quietly, but you can let it come back." So the gambling could operate, but local gambling split into two factions. One faction was favored by Circuit Judge Floyd Huff, and the other faction was favored by Municipal Judge Lloyd Darnell. And each judge and they were bitter enemies, and each judge retaliated against bookies and club owners who had supported the other judge in local elections. And he'd arrest those bookies and shut down their clubs, you know, of the ones who supported the other guy. And usually the clubs reopened, but all through the 50s, the gambling element operated in sort of an uncertain state. But by 1956, Madden had a quarter interest in the Southern Club with partners Jack McJunkins and Jimmy Phillips. And after Judge Huff demanded larger payoffs from the Southern Club, and for Madden in particular, Madden got really mad. And he sold his interest in the club to Jack McJunkins, George and Jack Packus, and Dino Sonsini. And he just said the heck with it and got out. He was quoted as saying, "Huff is out and out crooked. He used terrible tactics to gain control of gambling in Hot Springs, but he isn't going to control me." Isn't local politics wonderful? Of course, he's been completely clean from then on, you know. But, you know, Madden saw a new opportunity. Some bookies were having a hard time hooking up with a dependable wire service, and he made plans to provide a wire service for bookie joints in Garland County. And to do that, he worked with his friend, Q. Byron Hurst Sr. How many of y'all heard of Q. Byron Hurst Sr.? He's the father of Q. Byron Hurst Sr. Okay, the Hurst family's been in Hot Springs for a long time. There are a lot of Hursts. Well, now, he was a very close friend of Madden's, and he was his lawyer, and his office was on Woodbine, and Madden's house, you know, was just a couple of blocks away up on West Grand, and Madden would come in and just hang around Hurst's office all the time. Hurst, who was also a state senator then, assured Madden that he could arrange for him to have exclusive rights to the wire service through the local telephone company. And then Madden arranged through Carlos Marcello, who was the crime boss in New Orleans, to get the wire service. And the Hot Springs outlet they worked from was called the Downtown Printing Company, located on the 5th floor of the Ritter Hotel, which just happened to be owned by, guess who? Q. Byron Hurst. Now, they called this the Downtown Printing Company, but apparently the only printing they ever did was run off on a mimeograph machine, the daily scratches from the racetracks around the country. And the Ritter, there's a picture of it, kind of dim, was on the 5th floor. It was on 217 Exchange Street with the telephone company office up behind it, 1 block from Bathhouse Row, abutting the base of West Mountain, and lines were sent from the telephone office to the Ritter, and from the Ritter out to 8 bookies, most of them in downtown Hot Springs. And soon that Downtown Printing Company was providing racing results to his customers. Very successful business. And Madden always said, and maybe he did, he thought it was legal. But when the McClellan Senate Subcommittee began investigating organizing crime in the U.S., and when its special counsel, Bobby Kennedy, began pushing for federal legislation to control telegraph wire services, it was getting awful complicated. The heat was on, and Madden decided to get out of that business. So eventually, when he was summoned to appear before the McClellan Committee in 1961, he was able to answer truthfully, no, I'm retired. I don't have anything to do with that. But he continued to pursue an interest in gambling in Hot Springs, which leads us to the Vapors. Okay. This opened in 1960 with Dane Harris and Harry Hastings as the majority stockholders. Of course, Dane Harris was really the big force behind that. Madden had a minority interest in the Vapors. He was fiercely loyal to his friends. And this is his era about 1963. You can see he's older. This was taken at his house with one of the little dogs he and Agnes always had. I've been to the house, and there's a green stretch beside the driveway underneath the tree where there's a row of little tombstones. I was about 7 or 8 of them with the name of dogs and the years of the dogs' lives of their pets. It's just, Okay. About the time this photo was taken in '63, Madden got out of bed and testified for his friend Q. Byron Hurst Sr., who'd been charged with income tax evasion. Madden testified, he'd loaned Hurst $20,000, which had greatly reduced his net worth as provided by, it was some technicality that he needed to testify that would help Hurst. The jury found Hurst not guilty. Hurst said, "I'll never forgetOni's kindness in testifying for me. He was so sick at the time." Well, he doesn't look too healthy, does he? And his health was rapidly declining. And on April 24th, 1965, Oni Vincent, the Killer Madden, also called the Duke of the West Side, died in St. Joseph's Hospital. And he was buried in the Denby plot at Greenwood Cemetery. If you drive in the gate that's kind of opposite the Monument Company entrance there and look off to the right, you can find the stone quite easily. Now, the funeral was interesting. You don't see this contrasting groups of people at a funeral very often. Mayor Dan Wolf was there. and Chief of Police John Ermey was there, and also Joe Peretti, the close representative and friend of Carlos Marcello, the guy crime bang of New Orleans. You know, he had the gangsters and the local elite at his funeral. And Hugh Barnhurst Sr. gave his eulogy. And one of the things he said was, "There's no ballpark named after Oni Madden, no silver cup bearing his name, but his name is written upon the hearts of all the people he helped, with money, by deed, and by word of encouragement in their dark hours. It's been said, there's so much good in the worst of us, and so much bad in the best of us, that it doesn't behoove any of us to criticize the rest of us." Agnes continued to live in the home on West Grand, and occasionally some of Madden's old friends would come by and take her to dinner. An awful thing happened one summer night in 1971. Two masked men broke into the house. Some of you may have heard this story. They broke in and they wanted Agnes to tell. They thought Oni had money and jewelry hidden in the house. And they tied her up and they hit her and burned her with cigarettes to get her to tell them where the hidden treasure was. And of course there wasn't any hidden treasure, and eventually they left. She also had fractured a shoulder in that incident trying to escape. They were never caught. And for the next 13 years, she had a live-in caregiver named Roger Rucker. In 1987, relatives had her incapacitated, and the Arkansas Bank and Trust Company was made guardian of her estate. Later, Rucker declared that Agnes had deeded him one half of her house and had given him a lot of expensive jewelry. And there was a 2-year court battle between the caregiver and the Denby family. And they agreed eventually to a settlement. Then she died on April 14th, 1991 at the age of 90. Of course, she's buried next to Oni. I think what fascinates people about Oni Madden is that he's a mystery. How can a man who shot someone to death for asking his girl out be the same man who cared about the boys club and helping out soldiers? So who was Oni Madden? Was he a vicious killer and a criminal? Yes, he was in New York. Was he a model citizen? Yes, he was, once he got to Hot Springs and started a new life with his beloved Agnes. What did he mean to Hot Springs? He was a generous benefactor in many ways to the Chamber of Commerce, Community Chest, Boys Club, YWCA, YMCA, United Fund, Salvation Army, Civil Air Patrol, Navy League, the athletic departments of the public schools, to churches, and to many individuals, often anonymously. But what he didn't do is important too. He didn't try to or wasn't allowed to upset the local structure and take over the local gambling. So he lived in Hot Springs on Hot Springs terms. We'll probably never solve the mystery of someone who was, as Mae West said, so sweet but oh so vicious. But we can be grateful that Hot Springs only saw the sweet side of Oni Madden. People today see gangsters like Capone and Madden and many others who came here as colorful, fascinating celebrities. But they were, of course, vicious and violent men, but their connection to Hot Springs is one of the lures that draws tourists here and helps our economy. So despite the evil that they did elsewhere, at least in that regard, they've done some good at the end to the southern town they loved to visit.
Wow, that was really good, Liz. I learned so much that I didn't know. Thank you so much for coming today and doing the meeting. You always do a super job, whatever you talk about. So, is anybody, Paula, I guess, or Jean? Jean, you're next. Oops, did not go that way.
I will be as short as an Arkansas fall. Okay, the regular meeting of the Garland County Retired Teachers Association was held on December 13th, 2024. 31 members were present at the meeting. After the meeting was called to order, Paula Bettis introduced Mrs. Nash from Hot Springs High School. The Hot Springs Trojan Choir not only sang the Star Spangled Banner for us, they sang Christmas songs to spread Christmas holiday cheer. Long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The opening prayer was given by Elmer Beard. Paula Bettis shared information about the Literacy Council. She encouraged each of us to think about volunteering 1 hour per week with the students. The students require help with reading and speaking skills. She also expressed that donations would always be welcome. Sally Pierce reported a total of $8,534.03 in the general fund. The scholarship fund had a balance of $2,280. The total of the two funds together was $10,814.03. Mary Lois suggested that we give $100 to programs that donate their time and or travel to present at the meetings. Sally Pierce suggested that this be a nonprofit groups, and Brenda Size felt as if more research was needed to be done on this matter first. The speaker for February meeting will be Ms. Robbins, and the final meeting of the year will be Smoking Style. The topic will be Arkansas benefits. The meeting was closed by singing, "We wish you a Merry Christmas."
Treasurer's report. We have $8,445.32 in the general fund. However, $1,010 is designated for Mamie Phipps plaque. So basically we have $7,435 to spend. And our scholarship, we have $2,387, and so total we have $10,832.32. And at this point, Brenda, we don't have anybody to do the scholarship fund, to get a scholarship out there.
So you need to donate?
Yeah, no, to get people that wanna apply for our scholarship. So, just saying. Well, somebody needs to get going on that. And then, birthdays, we had Gary Burroughs was the 20th of February. You're welcome. Nelda, where's Nelda? There she is. The 21st of February, because we missed it. And then Donna was yesterday. Happy birthday, everybody. And Liz Robbins, give me a number between 1 and 31.
Oh, 22.
22. This is second time, second year. Guess who it is? Sharon Rogers. You got it last year.
That's weird.
You're welcome. And if anybody for the luncheon, it is Good Friday that we're having the luncheon, and out at Smoking in Style, $10. You do not owe dues for next year because we do it 2 years now, so no dues. And then this is just me. I'm on Single Parent Scholarship Fund. We're having the Gatsby event. It's a nighttime, and we're getting money for our single parents. So, and that's, I'm gonna put this up in the library. But it's a nighttime deal, and from 6 to 9 at the Vapors. So if you're interested, let me know. Okay, I think that's it.
Okay. somebody that might wanna come, miss the meeting today, please contact them, because we need to get the number for the, Smoking in Style. Also, if you know any newly retiring people from any of the school districts, if you could have them contact me or anybody that's on our, board, Paula, Sally, we'd love to talk to them about becoming a member of our group. And then I'll just see you guys in April at Smoking in Style.
Thanks to Jean, thank Jean for doing this.
Oh, Jean, oh yes, look back here. Jean spent many hours, I'm sure, or I would have spent many hours, on this, it's a PowerPoint display that she's done of the pictures that she takes in the meeting. And so, shows you what's going on in the meeting. Great picture of and I don't know what other pictures are in there actually. Jean did this.